I first addressed the squad in August. I explained the schedule was very, very difficult. I also explained that we weren't picked very high in the preseason polls, but with good justification. We lost our entire offensive line, all our receivers, including a Heisman Award winner. We couldn't throw the football. We lost our entire defensive line. We lost our last 3 games of the 1987 season by a substantial margin.
Grant, you talk about a ticking time bomb. That's what this is. You mentioned there was already a skirmish. The Michigan players were leaving the field. They crossed the path of the Notre Dame players. There was some brushing, some forearms were thrown, there was some pushing and shoving. The coaches had to separate the 2 teams and send them back into the locker room. The crowd got hostile. The players are short-tempered. This place is ready to explode.
Although Irish fans wondered about the experience level of a team featuring 10 first-time starters, Coach Lou Holtz had no intention of compromising the goals of his third Notre Dame team.
We want to be the best team in the country, and that's going to be the standard, and we're going to work to achieve that. And don't expect, well, because we got some problems, that we shouldn't be expected to win.
If replacing Heisman Trophy winner Tim Brown marked Holtz's most visible challenge, then sophomore Ricky Waters wasted little time filling the bill.
Back to the 19, cut to the left, gets to the 20, 25. He's at the 30, 35, to the 40. He's a block. That's the 50. He's going to go all the way to the 30, to the 20, to the 10. Touchdown, Notre Dame, 81 yards.
Much of Notre Dame's early success in 1988 would depend on the progress of a defensive unit that impressively blended a nucleus of veterans with 3 new starters on the defensive line. Led by junior linebacker Michael Stonebreaker and his 16 tackles, the Irish stymied Michigan's heralded ground game in the early going. Coming into the season, Notre Dame's rushing attack had been rated tops in the country by the Sporting News. With 5 new offensive line starters paving the way, sophomore Tony Brooks and junior Anthony Johnson helped the Irish rush for 141 yards of their own in the first half. Yet another newcomer, first-year place kicker Reggie Ho, had an immediate impact by kicking a pair of first-half field goals. Notre Dame's early 13-0 advantage gave Lou Holtz little chance to relax, as the eventual Big Ten and Rose Bowl champions poised for their inevitable comeback. Beginning with a 1-yard plunge by Leroy Horde and finishing with a 49-yard field goal, Michigan staked its claim to a 1-point lead with just over 5 minutes left in the game. Junior quarterback Tony Rice quickly moved the Irish downfield, first on a 21-yard first down scamper. Next on an 18-yard throw to sophomore tailback Tony Brooks. And finally on a Rice option play that gained 4 more yards. The Irish had driven 71 yards to the Michigan 9, setting the stage for heroics by Ho, as the diminutive walk-on prepared for a record-tying 4th field goal.
I was aware that it was an important kick, like every kick, but the thought of it being a last minute field goal that could win the game, I just blocked that out of my mind and concentrated on what I had to do.
With a little over a minute remaining, the capacity crowd rose to its collective feet as Ho prepared for his 26-yard attempt.
Steve Graham is the holder. He'll spot the ball down at the 16. Here it comes. The ball game on the line. Spot down. Kick is up, and it is good. And the Irish take the lead on field goal number 4 by Reggie Ho.
But Notre Dame's celebration would have to wait. Michigan marched to the Irish 32 for a last-ditch field goal try on the game's final play.
The 48-yard kick. Hash mark far side. Here's the snap. The spot down. The kick is up in the air. It's got a chance, and it is no good. It went off to the right. And the Irish dodged the bullet, and they win it by a score of 19-17.
For the second straight year, a victory over the always tough Wolverines proved to be a confidence-building debut for the 13th ranked Irish.
Well, when we were in the locker room after the Pittsburgh win, I said to the football team that we could beat the University of Miami, but there would be certain things that have to happen. Number one, they would have to believe in the spirit of Notre Dame. Number two, they'd have to believe in each other. Number three, they'd have to believe in the coaches. I was hoping to have a very, very positive week's practice. However, we lost both starting offensive guards against Pittsburgh, had to move 2 tackles in, and we couldn't have the type of week that I really expected. It wasn't very upbeat, it wasn't very positive, there was too much negative coaching out of necessity because of position switches, etc. So as I went to the pep rally and I stood up there, I just didn't feel real good, and yet I felt we were capable of winning. And I've never predicted we're going to do anything in my entire life. And I said that I felt we were going to win, and I said, and you go tell them I said so. I didn't feel that was going to fire Miami up because they didn't believe there was any way they could lose anyway. That they're always so very, very confident, which is always good in a football team, but I do think it helped our football team come to the realization of, hey, Coach Holtz does believe in it. But I also did not think that would make the news because I thought it was past the deadline. And when I got up the next morning and read that in the headlines, I thought, I did what? And fortunately, our football team went out and backed that up. But once again, I think it all starts with a faith and a belief.
I called Bo Schembechler earlier in the week. He had lost to Miami, and we had beaten Michigan also, and I asked him to compare the two teams. He said, you can beat them, but you're going to have to play an outstanding football game. And so that week we made great preparation, obviously.
We made each other better in practice. Anthony Johnson, one a great fullback, we would have live cut drills, you know, against the linebackers. But, you know, and he was coming out swinging, man. And if you know AJ, man, he was good. He was a good player, and he made me better. But that happened day after day after day in practice.
Practice was very intense. A lot of people had to do a lot of things they weren't prepared. We had to move people around, but just the whole week of preparing for that game alone was the highlight for me.
You know, it was great on game day because Lou made it hard during the week, so it was easy on Saturday.
The players had to have a feeling. We controlled whether we won or lost. We had a plan. The plan was up on the board. And every one of those, about turnovers, about penalties, about missed assignments, these are all things we controlled. And then as we get to the game, they had the pep rally. It was out at Steppen Center outside because the crowd was too big. And I remember saying very few things. Number one, there's 3 things I want you to do tomorrow. I want you to cheer louder than you ever have in your life because we're going to need your support. We don't need a 12th man. We may need a 13th and 14th man as well. Second thing I want you to do, conduct yourself with class as you always do. Notre Dame's a class organization. Number 3, I want you to go tell Jimmy Johnson, the coach at Miami, we're going to beat him like a yard dog tomorrow. And I hadn't planned on saying that, but I thought, well, it was safe. I didn't know it would be in the morning paper on Saturday morning. But then we go back to our meeting. After the pep rally, we go back to a meeting. And I said, now, why did I say that? And they said, well, you're trying to excite the fans. I said, no, I said it because I believe it. Now, let's go. How many of you are going to fumble the ball tomorrow? Tony, you're going to fumble the ball. Mark Green, no. And nobody going to fumble. Who's going to cause a fumble? Well, they all raise their hand. How are you going to cause? I'm going to hit the quarterback from the blind side. I'm going to strip the ball. Who's going to throw an interception? And we went through all. And I said, this game ain't going to be close. We will win.
You know, Lou had a great knack for getting you lathered up throughout the week with the psychological side and preparedness for the game. People often ask me, what's the greatest game you played in high school, college, or the NFL? And I always look back to that game and say it's the Miami Notre Dame game because there were so many flips and momentum shifts and so many great players on the field during that game, players that I went on and played against in the NFL and always reminisced about and talked about, and we always had the bragging rights because we won the game, you know?
It was probably, throughout my college and NFL career, probably one of the most intense games that I've ever played in.
We get in the game, And the last thing we did was we punted the ball. You know, after our pregame warm-up, we punted the ball. Well, the minute we lined up to punt, I looked down, Miami's still doing their pre. They come running down. The minute we lined up, they bumped Rocket Ismail. They ran right through our formation, and that's sort of a disrespectful thing. But so it's no big deal. But it was to the third-team players, not the first-team players. The third-team players, they aren't going to play. They're all excited. You end up in a tussle in the tunnel.
One guy went over me, and next thing you know, I'm in the bottom of the pile on the bleachers, and it was just melee with really nothing going on except people were on top of the bleachers, and everybody was wondering when everybody was going to get up to get out of it. So I think a lot more made of it than truly really happened.
I was embarrassed. And so we get in the locker room. I am really mad. And I said it in a very meaningful way. I said, if I see anybody during the course of this football game do anything but class or show disrespect to Notre Dame or anything else, you represent thousands, millions of people. You're not only going to be pulled out of this game, you're never going to play for Notre Dame again. I want to see a class operation. Now, after we win the game, if Miami wants to fight, fine, we'll meet them in the alley. And I didn't plan to say this, but it just came out. And if they do, you say Jimmy Johnson's asked for me. Well, I didn't get anything else. They went out the locker room. I wasn't done. I wanted to get they go storming out the locker room.
You know, when he said leave Jimmy Johnson's, but to him, you know, it was like, hey, we're all fired up.
It was like lighting a match and throwing it on gasoline at that point. And man, it took off.